right. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for tuning into this talk. As mentioned before, yes, we did a lot in a very short amount of time. And as always, I'd love to preface that the things that we started with, please do not do everything that we did. I think if we could go back a month, that we would actively be like, hey, man, I wish we had figured out how to narrow this in and do it in a bit faster way. Everything that I'm showing you today, we accomplished within 3 days and then launched those 18 events. And so to break down those numbers again, we launched 18 events within 13 days and had over 750 attendees. These events ranged in a plethora of sorts, where we did cooking events, we had open mics, we had sex therapy sessions, we had financial planning, movie nights, happy hours. We tested anything and everything that we could, and it kind of geared us towards the next steps of being able to scale these events. And so currently we have hosted over 60 events. We average about 8 events per week and had, as of yesterday, over 2,100 attendees. It's been a really exciting ride, and I want to take you through how we got through the first steps of that and how we are now able to get to the point where we are looking at 2 different types of events, where we're going from commercial style events where we're looking to monetize, and then community specific events where they benefit our online space. And so it's only happened in, as Beth said, 4 easy steps. We're going to harness in on the first 2, and then we're going to fly through the last 2. And so we're going to start talking about how we survey. Now, when you think of a survey, you obviously think of the ways that you send out a big survey, you have to take all of this time to read everybody's answers, you want to take in everything and be like, here are all of the best choices. If your company says, no, we need to launch events next week, we don't have time to do all of that. The great thing is that you already have these resources available to you. First step that I would suggest that you do is take an in-house survey. I'm assuming that many of you have already been hosting in-person events. We used to host in-person events. We had events in 12 cities worldwide, and we would host about 30,000 people a year. And so when we realized that we had to pivot, we went straight to our city event managers and anybody else who has ever hosted an event for us and just took a survey of like, hey, what worked really well? What do you think can translate into an online space? And what are things that you want to see? Then we went into our actual community and just scanned some of the stuff that they wished that they saw. And at the end of the day, it's probably just as simple to do a general post inside of your community and ask people what they want to see, get those first few answers, and kind of go from there. Don't stress about having this big survey out. When you start to launch your events, send it so that you can know what to plan moving forward. But we are discussing right now how to get those first few out and to get over that hump of feeling nervous about launching a virtual event. So once we got those ideas from all of our in-house people and asking the community and doing all of these things, we grouped them into different event types. So these can be based off of subject, this can be based off of the information that you're sharing, all of the above. And then we compare that to the amount of time that it took to do an event. So we tested models between 45 minutes and at most, I believe, 2.5 hours. And we wanted to make sure that these event types that we had planned for and had ideas for had enough content to fit in that amount of time. We know that our average sweet spot now is about an hour, but if we're hosting a movie night or we're hosting a club night, we know that we can go a little bit longer. And that was because we were able to test and be like, do we have enough content? The next things that you want to add on this running doc are resources and tools that you would need for your event. So what links do you need? What information do you need? Are you going to have any special guests? What platform do you want to use? How does this platform serve your community? Will it be able to give you all of the ways that you are able to connect and communicate with them? I would highly suggest putting this on one running doc, bookmark it, tab it, do all these things, because that is going to be your master doc. That is going to be your event Bible information tool that you want to bring in, because when you go back, if you've had new ideas, you can just chuck them right in or see if somebody has thought of it. You don't want to be looking over 8 different documents as you're in this planning process. So you have your master doc, you've done all this beautiful planning and ideas and resources. Now you have to communicate it to the team. These are the 5 areas that we used for our communication. We put our Asana board together to help with the graphics and to know which events have been scheduled or have been thought of or planned or are just in the brainstorming process. we created a separate Google Calendar just for our in-house community. Well, more so our in-house staff. So our engineers, our product team, all of that could be aware that these events were happening. So then if we had questions, they could know kind of how quickly the turnaround needed to be. And of course, you do everything on your Google Calendar, right? You would never cancel an event that we put on there. So this also encouraged the rest of the team to feel like they could join and that they were invited to join your event. We have daily check-ins still to this day, and the check-ins can run as short as 10 to 15 minutes or as long as an hour. This is the time for you to sit and review what happened at the last event and also what you need for your next event. Since our events range so wide and they are all different types of social areas, we are planning different things almost for each one. But then we started to figure out the path that this topic can carry to this topic and how we can kind of let the content work for us. We created a specific Slack channel that was just for the event. So anybody who had ideas, just wanted to be in the know, or actively wanted to be a part of it, they were able to join that Slack channel, and then we had the running Google Doc. Creating these lines of communication is going to make your life so much easier. And if you saw my talk at CMX Connect last September, it's going to give you the receipts you need to always tune back into it. Receipts is my favorite thing, and it gives you a spot to go back and look for everything that you need. So you've had the surveys, you've started to create your ways to communicate. Now you're going to brainstorm what your first events are going to be. Now don't sweat, it's a stressful time for everyone, but you have already done a bunch of the work ahead of time. Also, if you're lucky enough to be in a space where you used to host events and now you have to switch to virtual events, you're winning because you kind of already know what events already work. You know what topics people are interested in. You've seen the numbers of who shows up. You can take these and put them into a virtual space. Those are probably the ones that you want to start off with so that you can get your footing and feel confident. So even if something else goes wrong, whether the technology goes wrong, like something's going to go wrong, so prepare for that. But if it doesn't, like you feel good about this topic and people are committed to this topic and not just kind of jumping into try. Then once you get those first few events done, you want to start looking at what are the events that the community has asked for and start putting those into your calendar. So you're coming in and you're hearing the community's voices, but you're still the person running it at the moment, or you have a community leader running it and you want them to feel as confident as possible before you start testing in new areas. Now, here are some more documents that you have to have. And these are just more spaces that you can brainstorm and make sure that you are prepared to have this conversation. So the first thing I would do is after you've gone through the surveys and the lists and everything like that, you want to put the top requests that were made in the community. Then you want to kind of start putting bullet points of conversation topics that you would have with that. So when we started planning a happy hour, we were like, well, what the hell are we going to talk about for a whole happy hour? So we started creating games. We figured out, we did 2 truths and a lie with people. We posted, excuse my language, you did a kill, fuck, or marry with 3 pictures of people that were in there. We wanted to establish what was going to keep them engaged the whole time. And you want to be able to have that guide as well, especially because if the conversation starts to wane off, you want to be able to have topics prepared to talk about. If you're going to have any special guests or any community leaders to come in, you want to be able to have them ready, check a date, make sure you're good. But the thing that I want to focus on the most is the virtual event guidelines. You want to have the space ready to be able to make sure that people who are running your events feel confident while they're doing it. So the things to say at the beginning of your event, what to say at the end of it, how to encourage people to engage. What are the guidelines for you to remember that if somebody comes in acting a fool in your event or tries to Zoom bomb you, that you're prepared for what's going to happen and then how to communicate that to your team. I work for a social and dating app. People are so thirsty right now and are just acting a bit out of the usual than they normally would. It's on a higher scale. So when they come to our events, you would think that because we hold them accountable more so with showing their video and doing other things, that they would quote unquote behave, but no, we have to be ready for people to come and crash our event, especially people who are homophobic and transphobic to come in and do things. So we created these virtual event guidelines to make sure that everybody feels comfortable within the community as we're hosting our virtual events. So now you've put all of this together, you have your talking points, you have your ideas, you're ready to put these things on a calendar. I promise this is my last page of documents, but this is the stuff that you want to have ready for pre and post event. So when I mentioned the hot or not list, I'm talking about what has worked during the event and what didn't. This is something to be able to review as each event continues, especially if you start doing events over and over again. We've done multiple sex therapy events, and each time we're like, okay, which questions work, which don't, and how do we move from there? You want to have your event format laid out. This is like your topic of discussion, your guide, your event, your virtual guidelines. Moving from there, the date, just to, days are made up right now, so it just keeps you on track. And how many attendees you're expecting, making sure that you have the link to your Zoom. So that's what I mean when I say calendar. And then post-event notes. You don't want to wait to write those, like write them immediately so that you can share that with your team as soon as possible and see what you all gathered from your own separate spot. You want to build out a calendar. We did it very simply within our staff. Like, it was just easy for us to build this out. There are plenty of tools that you can use. You can use Asana, you can use Trello, you can use Airtable, and sometimes you can just draw out a nice little calendar and make sure that everything is laid out. Please do not ask me what these colors are. We have since updated our calendar system, but we still use this format and we have new colors, so I don't remember what these old colors are. But it gave us a very clear view of which events were going out when, and this was when we expanded into the UK. So we were doing very US-based, time-friendly events at first, and then we started planning for the UK. And it was like, okay, here's everything that's happening on that day. It just makes it very clear for everyone to see, especially when you're scheduling, to see what's empty and what's available on the calendar, and if you want to fill it. Please do not expect you to throw 18 events within 13 days like we did. We were very ambitious, but if you're feeling #challenge accepted, go for it. And then, of course, you want to bring in your marketing and design team, because, of course, we all have a marketing and design team, right? Most of you are probably just laughing at me as I say that. We also do not. So we created these graphics in-house. But the thing that I want to point out about what you're going to do for your visuals for your event is that you want to make it so that they're easily shareable, that they're consistent branding with your company, and that it has a simple, digestible way for people to take in the information. So on each of our event plans, it has same spot for the title, what day, what time in different time zones, and what platform we're using. You can see the one on the bottom, second to the right, that is the NYC virtual speed dating. That one looks slightly different than the rest of them. That's one of our events that you pay for. That's one of our monetized events. So that is the only reason why it looks slightly different, but people still know that this is a her event, and they are able to see the branding and kind of tune in and know that this is what it is. Also, we get to utilize sharing this on all different platforms. And when you're hosting that many events in that short amount of time, you need to create a graphic that is very easy to edit. So I believe we used Sketch for this, but I also highly suggest Canva as well, and just put something together that is easily to digest, has the information you need, and shows what the event's about. And last but not least, you just want to go for it. I think all of us are so set on finding the perfect event to start. Pick the 1 to 2 that you're comfortable with and start there. Then that just gets the ball rolling. I think that's been one of the hardest things for us, but we made sure to move through with it. And so I want to kind of take in or provide a bit of information for those initial things to think about when you do start these events and want to start tracking things. So one of the things that we follow are engagement levels. Now, even though there are arrows pointing to each of these, that doesn't mean that it's going to be how you follow it, but you want to focus on what's happening in your live chat room. And how are people engaging? Are they paying attention to what you're talking about? Or are they in a completely different discussion? Because we've had that happen before. What is the attendance duration? So for smaller events, this is much easier because you can sit and probably watch on one single page who's there, who's left, and when they left. If you get to those events that are like 100, 200 people, I would suggest doing a time check-in. So maybe every 15 minutes or every 20 minutes, check how many people have been to the event and then check it again. I highly suggest doing virtual events if you're going to run them, make sure that you have somebody else helping you on the back end so they can be the person that's watching those numbers and you don't have to sit and try to do everything. How many videos are available? So I want to make sure that this is clear. I've also seen this pop up in the chat throughout the day. A webinar is not a virtual event. It's not. If you're trying to connect with your community, that is not going to be the connecting piece. Being able to provide a space for your community to see each other is going to be the thing that brings them together and encourages their engagement. So we always do a count to see how comfortable people are based on how many videos there are. So if you have 4 pages worth of people inside of your event, but only 3 pages don't have their videos up and only 1 page does, what does that say? Have you been able to encourage those people to put on their video and engage with each other? Have they been able to talk? You want to be sure that they have the space to do this and that they feel comfortable doing that. So a webinar does not allow people to see each other, and that's why these virtual events are different. And then your return rate. So this can be looked at in 2 different ways for me. One of them is, do they return to another event? Can you track how this person is returning to different events? What events are they attending? Or I measure this as, are they returning to the in-app community and posting and commenting and talking to other people? So those are 2 different ways that you can look at it. I kind of look at both. My global events manager definitely looks at returning to other events. I definitely look at, please come and post in the community after the event. So that all depends on you. As well, prepare your marketing. Make sure that people know how to hear about your event, because if they've missed it, they'll be super sad, and we'll be sad. They'll just be sad. That's all I have to say. So in these different ways, this is how we did our marketing. We utilized our community with community posts and push notifications. We send the push notifications about 5 minutes into the event. Sometimes people just genuinely forget that the event is happening. So we send that push to drive people in. That almost doubles or triples our event size automatically by sending that. So if you have the opportunity to send that or an email, please do that. We created a separate email that is just for our events, since we do about 8 events a week, and we advertise it all on that specific email. We also use our social media. Any of the people who join the event are free to post it, and we give them the graphics and the links to do that, and any group threads that you have within your community. Now, your business is going to want to look at how the events benefit the community. This is a very, very short list of ways that the community can, or that the events benefit the community, and that's the order that you want to look at it. You don't want to see how the community benefits the event. You want to always look at the event benefiting the community. So I mainly look at new members joining the community and increased engagement in there, because I know that my community drives retention. So if I get new people joining and they're engaging in the community, that retention is already going up and it's meeting our business objectives. Now, my global events manager looks at partnerships and brand awareness in an effort to monetize. And so that benefits the company in other different ways. And at the end of the day, I want you all to remember that you are now, with these virtual events, providing a space for the global community to connect during unprecedented times. Being able to just, it doesn't have to be perfect. You just have to get it started and make sure that it fits. So I'm hoping with all of these details that I can say that you're ready to go and launch your events, and that you're feeling a bit confident. And I think I ended right on time for us to be able to have Q&A. Beth, is that correct? I hope so. I hope I did it right at the moment.
Yay, you did. Yay. And I was wondering, sitting there like, when is she gonna throw in a Beyonce gif? And I'm so glad that you did at the end.
Gotta save it.
So Shana and everyone tuning in, there are so many questions that have come out of this. So I truly don't believe we're going to get through all of them, but I encourage you all to maybe Shana ask on Twitter or something, and you can answer the questions on Twitter, or maybe a blog post. I don't know. There's a lot of questions in here. But let's start. So one question, what is one of the coolest or wackiest or most surprising events your community has hosted online so far?
Oh, man. So we did, okay. Kind of, I mean, the title's safe. So we did a cooking kink class. So it was like this person went and cooked, but then like discussed like the beginnings of kink and all of that in it. And that was phenomenal. So that was probably the best and like most random thing that we came up with, because he identified as a trans man, and he was like, look, I want to come in and do this and try this with you. And we were like, absolutely. And it turned out to be one of our events that we have continued to do every week.
Amazing. I feel like if you can think of it, people out there want it.
Yeah,
definitely.
It happened.
Totally. Molly wants to know, how is your audience responding to paid events versus unpaid events in the virtual space?
Yeah, hi Molly. So they've actually taken it really well. We've been very specific about which events are going to be paid, and so we honed in on virtual dating. Virtual speed dating was our main thing. So we started that just as the flow, because everything else we were like, okay, we can't really go and take back what we were doing there. So the current community events that we have, we're like, okay, if we're going to do this, then that needs to be sponsored, and we can shout out the sponsor, and that's how we can monetize that. But we had not started really doing virtual speed dating. I think we did one event just to test it and make sure that it worked and people liked it, and then started putting it out as a paid option. So people were already used to it. So I would basically suggest don't backtrack on what you've already put out. If you already put something out, find a sponsor, and for new events, you can test that model. But they've been very positive about it. And I think they also really like that they're supporting an LGBTQ plus brand. So
perfect. I'm going to work two questions into one because I think they kind of overlap a little bit. April and Marjorie both asked, how did you split the team up running the events to make sure the team didn't burn out? Do you utilize volunteers from your community, especially if there are regional sensitivities, etc.?
Yeah, so we definitely did not pay attention to burnout when we first started. Again, we did 18 events in 13 days. Who sleeps? So we have now started to split into that. So we tested a few people that had come into the virtual events really hot, and we're like, oh my gosh, we love these. These are great. And so we had some of them lead the events. And that's when we figured out what our interview model was going to be, because we had one person crash and burn in that, or one person who came in with a huge personality, but then just like choked up when they got in front of people. So we established that process. We have some city event managers that we already know and trust and have those personalities to do it. So we utilize them because they were already people that we had on board. And then I utilized some of our moderator team to come in and try to do it as well. And then we planned how to plan it ahead of time. We broke up who was going to do what. I've started to come in and do more events that were just the community focused ones. So like our meetup ones for like our trans women group, our mindfulness and well-being community, things like that. So I started taking those over, and we've slowly started to split off which events fall under a more commercial and which ones fall under more community, and who takes charge of that.
Perfect. You know what? We're out of time. Maddie, Andrea, Josh, everyone else who asked questions. Like I said, I encourage you to maybe tweet Shana, and she can answer those questions virtually on our other online platforms. Okay, thank you so much, Shana, again. As always, inspiring, actionable, so wonderful.